Tony, look at me. We're gonna be okay. You can rest now.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Brandon. Welcome back to Murata Media. So at the beginning of July, Barnes & Noble has a sale of Criterion Collection Blu-rays where you can get them for 50% off. And if you're not familiar with what the Criterion Collection is, they're a company that remasters movies that they consider classic or important to cinema. And as I mentioned, Barnes & Noble has a sale on these Blu-rays every summer, so you can get them for 50% off because they're usually pretty pricey. And as you saw from the intro, my wallet definitely took a hit from this thing, but I just couldn't help myself because there are so many goddamn good movies on this collection that I just wanted to have. And so I'll be showing off the movies that I bought during the sale. Some of these I had seen before, some of them I watched after I bought them, and some of them I still haven't watched yet. But believe me, I will get to all of them eventually. I'll be going in alphabetical order, so without further ado, let's get right into it. And so the first movie today is 12 Angry Men. Classic film. Made in, when was this movie made? 1957, and it still holds up so well today. It's amazing that a movie that takes place in one central location for a majority of it can be as intense as this one gets. Director Sidney Lumet does such an incredible job, and I believe this was his directorial debut. I could be wrong, but I think I remember seeing that somewhere, and if it is, this is as impressive as a debut gets. Right from the beginning, we're introduced to our 12 jurors. We go around the room in an incredible one-shot take that takes about a few minutes, and we learn a little bit about the jurors and how they feel about the case, the defendant, and just how the day is going because they're experiencing one of the hottest days of the year, so that only ramps up everybody's emotions. And they all have this preconceived notion that the defendant is guilty of murdering his father, except for Henry Fonda, who spends the entire runtime trying to convince the other jurors that he may be innocent. And this isn't really a hot take or anything, but everybody says that this movie is a commentary on the American justice system, and I can definitely agree with that, but to me, I see it more as a character study of personal bias and prejudice, because some of the jurors are just flat out bigoted and they think this kid is guilty just because of where he comes from. But in my opinion, this movie is required viewing. I actually just found out some people had to watch this movie in school, and I never did. I actually watched it fairly recently for the first time, but definitely one I will revisit in the future. Being John Malkovich, from the twisted mind of Charlie Kaufman, directed by Spike Jonze. I watched Spike Jonze's last film, Her, recently, and I absolutely loved that movie, and I wanted to check out the other movies he's directed, and I saw that Being John Malkovich was on the Criterion Collection, so I thought, why not? A very, very funny movie that has a lot to say about society and how we long to be someone else rather than live our own mundane lives. And some people are so desperate to be anybody else that they are willing to be John Malkovich for 15 minutes before they're thrown out onto the New Jersey Turnpike. And this is the mind of Charlie Kaufman, who is one of the most unique writers, I think, ever. He's also written movies like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, Adaptation, Synecdoche, New York. And I love his writing style because all his movies kind of have this existential question to them, and it really makes you contemplate a lot, and Being John Malkovich is no different. The Breakfast Club, a John Hughes classic. I think the first time I watched this movie was on network television, which was a mistake because a lot of the curse words are censored, and I believe there were even some scenes missing, but I can't quite remember. I just know it's been a long time, but classic movie for anybody who's into 80s film. This is not my favorite John Hughes movie. I believe Ferris Bueller's Day Off is my personal favorite of his, but this one is also fantastic, and I have not watched this Criterion Blu-ray yet, but I'm very interested to see how it looks, so I'm excited to watch it again. Bull Durham. This is one of my dad's favorite sports movies, and I bought this because I'm a huge sports fan and I love baseball, and this is considered one of the best baseball movies, possibly one of the best sports movies of all time, and I wish I had more to say about it because I still have not seen it, but I'm looking forward to it, so maybe I'll talk more about it in a future video, but we'll see. City Lights, Charlie Chaplin. I still have not watched this one yet as well, but I've seen a few of Charlie Chaplin's other movies. I think I've watched The Great Dictator and Modern Times, which are both on the Criterion Collection as well, but I couldn't find them. But I wanted to buy this one because Charlie Chaplin is a comedy legend, and I think his movies are very unique. So this is another one I'll be watching in the near future, and I'm very much looking forward to it. Dazed and Confused, Richard Linklater. Probably one of my favorite directors, I think that's safe to say, but I have yet to see a movie from Richard Linklater that I have not liked. And I think of all of the Criterions I bought that I watched after I bought them, I think this one was my favorite. Such a big surprise. I did not expect to love this movie nearly as much as I did. There's virtually no plot to it. We just follow these high school kids on the last day of school in the late 70s and what they did throughout the day. And the characters are all very interesting and memorable, especially Matthew McConaughey's Wooderson, who I believe this was his acting debut. And it's so interesting to think about that when this movie came out, nobody knew who he was at the time, because he's easily one of the biggest and best actors working today. And this is one of the cases where Criterion went all out with it, and they really didn't have to. Like, this is how it looks before you take it out of the slide cover. Here, let me show you. This is how it looks afterwards, and there's a few more surprises inside. Like, we got the little booklet that a lot of the Criterion movies come with, but this one is pretty big, but look at that. And it also came with this poster with all the characters on it, and I'm not sure what kind of car that is, but it's a pretty sweet car. And yeah, I love little features like this because, like I said, Criterion went all out and they absolutely did not need to. So maybe I'll find a frame for this and hang it in my room someday, because this is definitely a movie I want to revisit. But to put it short, this is such a great hangout movie, just a movie that you can put on with your friends one night. Not really much to think about too deeply. It's very straightforward, but it's so goddamn entertaining, and I can't recommend it enough. Detour from 1945. This one intrigued me because I believe I saw somewhere that this is one of Christopher Nolan's favorite movies, and I'm like, hell, if Christopher Nolan likes it, then I'll definitely most like it as well, and I did. This movie is great. Very, very short. It's only, how long is this movie? It's only 69 minutes long, so it's just a little over an hour, but it's so interesting, and the main character has to be the most unlucky guy in the entire world because he just is not having a good day. But this is one that I had not heard of before I saw it on the collection, and I think if you like older cinema from like the 40s and 50s, then this is one you should definitely check out because it doesn't get talked about enough, and I think it should. Do the Right Thing, Spike Lee, probably his best movie and easily his most famous movie. And I have to agree, of all the movies I've seen of his, this one is most definitely my favorite. This is a movie that has a lot to say about racism and prejudice and bigoted people, but this movie is not all serious because it is very funny in some parts as well. Very memorable characters as well. I think my personal favorite character was the mayor. He's just this old man who wears a fedora and a suit, and he's clearly an alcoholic, but he's very wise and he cares about the people in the neighborhood of Bed-Stuy. And this movie also has a lot of actors who are really big today, and this is one of their earlier roles. Like Martin Lawrence, I believe this was his acting debut, as well as Giancarlo Esposito, who you know from Breaking Bad and most recently The Mandalorian. But this movie is very heavy, and the ending is absolutely tragic, and I feel like this isn't one I won't watch again for a while because I'm still processing it and getting over that ending because it really hit me hard. But other than that, this is a great movie, and definitely check this one out as well. Hoop Dreams, considered to be one of the greatest documentaries ever made, and I hate to say it, but this is another one that I have not seen yet. But like I said earlier when I was talking about Bull Durham, I love sports, and a good sports documentary is just my cup of tea. And I feel like this one is definitely required viewing for sports fans, so I thought, hey, I'll check this one out. But I can't give my full thoughts about it because I have not watched it yet, but believe me, I will get there, and I'm so excited to watch it. Marriage Story, Noah Baumbach, one of my favorite movies from last year. I'm so excited that this movie has a physical media release because it was a Netflix original, and I'm so happy that I own it now too. Very sad, and one of the most realistic depictions of marriage and divorce that I think I've ever seen. And this is another case that has so many cool features that Criterion absolutely did not need to include, but did. So let me show you what they put in here. So when you open it up, there's Nicole, played by Scarlett Johansson, and then Charlie, played by Adam Driver, and also there's their son Henry. And the thing that they have in here are the notes that Charlie and Nicole wrote about each other in the movie. This is how the movie opens, with them reading these notes that they wrote about each other. And that's just such a cool little feature that they didn't need to do, but they went all out for these cases, and I love that they do that. But this film got a lot of love at the Oscars this past year. It only won for Best Supporting Actress for Laura Dern. She absolutely deserved it, but this was my personal favorite screenplay of the year because Noah Baumbach is just incredible at writing dialogue. His dialogue and the actor's blocking is just, it's so realistic. You could tell that this man knows how humans interact with one another. Have not checked this one out on Criterion yet. I haven't watched it since it was first released on Netflix, but definitely one that I'm very excited to watch again. Night of the Living Dead, George A. Romero, one of several zombie movies that he made, and this one is considered the pinnacle. And I will be honest, I have not watched this one yet either, but there's a reason for that. This is a zombie movie, and I feel like a movie like this would be good to experience around Halloween time, and we're coming up on Halloween. We're at the end of August right now, so I'll definitely be watching this one in the near future, and I'm looking forward to it. Portrait of a Lady on Fire, Celine Sciamma. This movie just came out in the United States just at the beginning of this year, and I went and saw it in the theaters by myself because I couldn't find anybody else who wanted to watch it with me, and it was pretty fantastic. I loved every second of it, which really surprises me that it was released on Criterion this fast. I mean, it did technically come out in 2019, but it didn't have a North American release until February of this year. I guess Criterion loved it so much they thought it deserved to be re-released almost immediately. But this movie was fantastic. It has some of the most stunning cinematography that I can remember in any movie I've seen recently, and there were some damn good movies that had amazing camera work last year. Such a great ending. It just holds on the same shot for a few minutes. How long was it? Like maybe 2 or 3 minutes. It just holds on one shot, and that's how the movie ends. And it's so intense. It's just splendid direction from Celine Sciamma, and this is one that I definitely want to show to some people to get their thoughts on it. Punch Drunk Love by Paul Thomas Anderson, starring Adam Sandler in his very first dramatic role. And yeah, this role is everything that people hyped it up to be. Adam Sandler is remarkable in this movie. I don't think that this performance is as good as his performance in Uncut Gems, but it's definitely a close second. And this movie has one of the strangest plots I've ever seen in any film ever. And if you're not familiar with the plot, Adam Sandler plays an antique plunger salesman named Barry Egan, who is being exploited by this crooked mattress salesman who also runs a phone sex operation. And meanwhile, Barry meets a woman who is the woman of his dreams, and he's also purchasing copious amounts of pudding to exploit a mistake made in a frequent flyer miles promotion. Yeah, it's really strange when I put it that way, but to me, it actually kind of made sense in the grand scheme of things, but I can't really do it justice by just explaining it. Believe me, this is one that you'll have to definitely check out, and this is one of Paul Thomas Anderson's most underappreciated movies, in my opinion. Repo Man by Alex Cox, starring Emilio Estevez. I'll be honest, this is another one that I have not watched yet, but I was very intrigued by it because this is considered one of the most cult classic movies of the 80s, and it just looked interesting, and this cover is awesome. Got the LA city map, and it makes a mohawk on this skull. I mean, come on. Where do they come up with this stuff? It's just, yeah, but have not watched it yet, but You know what I'm going to say. I'm looking forward to it because I am. Believe me, I am. Scorsese shorts. What this is a collection of 5 short films made by the great Martin Scorsese, and these were made in the mid-60s when he was in college at New York University, as well as the 70s. And I have not watched this one yet, but I feel like I really don't have an excuse for it because these are 5 short films. I think the whole thing is just about, how long is it? A little over an hour in length, and yeah. But I bought this because Martin Scorsese is one of my favorite directors, and I absolutely love seeing where these directors and filmmakers who are considered the best of today, where they started at, because everybody isn't very good when they first start out, and they just get better as time goes by. So I was so intrigued that Criterion put these on a Blu-ray to see where one of the greatest living directors ever started from, and I couldn't be more excited to check these out. Seven Samurai, Akira Kurosawa, a movie that was well ahead of its time. This movie was released in 1954, and it feels like it could have been made today. This movie has some of the best acting and action sequences that I have ever seen, which is unbelievable to think about when you consider that this movie was made 66 years ago. It's 3.5 hours long, but believe me, the journey is absolutely worth it. And what I love so much about Seven Samurai, aside from the fact that it's one of the greatest movies ever made, is that it doesn't really have a happy ending. Like, there aren't many happy things that happen. And what I mean by that is when the bandits attack this village that the samurai are protecting, which serves as the main plot for this movie, there is always consequence. Like, they don't come out of these things scot-free. Like, someone dies or something really tragic ends up happening. And it's very sad, and the ending to this movie is very sad as well, and I thought it was absolutely perfect because the entire movie wasn't really building up to a happy ending, and the last shot alone is one of the most iconic final shots in cinema history, in my opinion. This is required viewing. If you have not seen Seven Samurai, please watch it, because its influence can be felt in films of the past and today as well. Silence of the Lambs. This is one that I was not aware was on the collection, but when I was at Barnes & Noble I found it and I'm like, oh yes, absolutely getting that one. And I will be 100% honest, I had not seen this movie until I bought it on the collection, and yeah, I'm ashamed it took me so long because this movie is flawless. Jodie Foster and Anthony Hopkins are both unbelievable. They both took home the Oscars for their performances, and they absolutely deserved them. And I believe Anthony Hopkins won the Best Actor Oscar with the least amount of screen time than any winner ever. He only had about 20 minutes of total screen time, but he steals the show whenever he appears on screen. In fact, this movie won the 5 big Oscars. It won Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Director for Jonathan Demme, as well as Best Adapted Screenplay. And that's so amazing to think about because this movie was released in February and it won the biggest awards at the Oscars a year after it came out. That is just amazing because movies that come out at the beginning of the year, typically in January and February, are seen as throwaways and not really contenders for award season. Yeah, this movie is unbelievable because it is so suspenseful and it's very interesting to think about the concept of it because they're using a serial killer to get into the mind of a serial killer that they're trying to catch. I'll definitely rewatch this one again in the near future because it's just so perfect. I loved every second of it and it kept me on the edge of my seat. Some Like It Hot by Billy Wilder, starring Jack Lemmon, Tony Curtis, and Marilyn Monroe. And I watched this movie for the first time just a few months ago, and there is a fucking motorcycle outside that is ruining my shoot. Please go away, sir. Thank you. So, like I was saying, I just watched this movie for the first time a few months ago, and I think it's pretty safe to say that this is one of the funniest movies that I've ever seen. And a big reason for that is the chemistry between Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis, because you get the sense that they're this comedy duo that's been working together for years. Now, I don't know for sure if they ever did another movie with one another, but if they didn't, they absolutely should have, because they're both hilarious together. And this movie is also just comedy gold because of its concept. If you're not familiar with the plot, it's about these two musicians who go on the run from the mob after they witness a murder. So they disguise themselves as women so they can be a part of this all-female band that's on tour. And just with that concept alone, you know hilarity is going to ensue. But this movie had me laughing out loud multiple times, and this is definitely one I want to show to people in the near future, because I feel like this is a great movie to watch with a group of people who just love comedy as much as I do. And last but not least, we have The Vanishing. So a while ago I was watching another YouTuber talk about their Criterion Collection pickups, and they bought this movie, and they explained the plot, and it really intrigued me. I really wish I could remember who the YouTuber was so I could credit them, but I can't remember, so I apologize. But the basic premise of this movie is this couple who's on vacation in France, and the wife disappears at a rest stop, and the husband continues searching for her for 3 years, and he starts to receive postcards and letters from the man who kidnapped her. And I was immediately drawn in by that plot, because that sounds like it could be absolutely crazy and very creepy. And that's exactly what this movie was. Now, when I first bought it, I was not aware that this was a foreign language film. It's considered a Dutch film, but they speak multiple languages like Dutch, French, and there's even a few scenes where they speak English. And apparently this movie also has an American remake from the same director that Jeff Bridges is in, but I hear it's not very good, and if you had to choose between the two, you absolutely have to watch this one because it was the original. But this movie was pretty crazy and very unsettling in parts, and it was so interesting to get a glimpse into the mind of a man who just wants to commit an unspeakably evil act. But if you like crime thrillers, then I can't recommend this one enough, because it had me on the edge of my seat the entire time. Well, that's it, everybody. Those were the Criterion Blu-rays that I picked up at the Barnes & Noble sale this year. If you guys have seen any of these movies, let me know what you thought about them. Did you love the ones that I loved just as much as I did? And let me know what you thought of the ones that I haven't watched yet, if you've seen them. I'll probably make another video like this at some point in the future, most likely next year when I go to this sale again. But if you guys like this video, be sure to hit that thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe. I have a few reviews that I've written out that you'll see in the next week or so. If you guys want to see me talk about my Blu-ray collection, I'll link those videos right over here. Other than that, I hope you all have a tremendous rest of your day, and I will see you all next time.